Hey everyone, and welcome to Mayfield and Friends, episode 27. Today I have on the cast Saebae or Saeder, however you want to recognize him as. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the people, not that there probably isn't any, who may not know who you are.
Hello. First of all, thank you for asking me to come on the podcast. My name's Saebae or Saeder. Saeder's my real name, and I am the host of the Saebae cast and a maxed Iron Man that's pretty, I would say, completionist style, and been a streamer for about 4.5 years. And yeah, just love the game. Love the trajectory it's on for the most part, and just excited about the future for the game, and just seeing people like Mayfield starting a podcast, seeing other content creators getting involved in the community is really awesome to see as well. So yeah, thank you again for having me.
Awesome, fantastic. And yeah, one of the funny things is a friend of mine actually sent a clip from, I think it was a cold one, and then I don't remember the other guest you had on.
Whale.
Yes.
Okay.
And like 3 hours into it, Whale had mentioned, he was like, "Have you ever listened to the Mayfield and Friends?" And I was like, "Oh my god, what?" There are people who like it's just crazy to think like there are like bigger people who actually like listen to this and enjoy it. So it's cool to always get like people like yourself on, and then anybody else who I've had on. It's always been a blessing to be able to do this and have fun doing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, Whale's honestly just a wonderful guy, and he's always shouting out the homies. If anybody ever got banned from Twitch, he's always like the first one to put the hashtag free whoever in his Twitter, and he's just truly a homie. And I got to meet him in Tennessee back in April, and truly just a legendary human. So
Awesome.
shout out Whale.
Big shout out. So earlier you mentioned you play a maxed Iron Man, and you do. I think a lot of people know you as the Clue Scroll guy with
Oh
your.
yeah, I didn't even mention that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I started. Watching you getting introduced was like when you talked about doing uh, all the Sarachnis, and then I think you were still on the Inquisitor Mace hunt before Fasani's ever came out, and then Fasani's came out and you got it in what, like 100 KC.
Yeah, about I think it was 82 or 83 KC.
So what about Clue Scrolls is it for you? Because I know, like I said, that's I think a lot of people originally who started watching you, that was kind of their introduction mainly to it was the Clue Scroll thing. So what about that like spoke to you in terms of like the hundreds of things you can do in this game?
So I think my passion for Clue Scrolls really started back in 2015 when I first started playing old school. I just as a brief history, I played as a child from years 2004 to 2007, and then I quit when the wilderness changes and free trade got removed. And I didn't play for 8 years straight. And then in 2015, I was doing solar sales out in Las Vegas, and my roommate got me back into RuneScape. And so the first thing I did, just the early level stuff. I was building my account, didn't really know what I was doing, still played as a noob. But I believe some YouTube guide or something was talking about medium clue scrolls. And so I just decided, I'm going to go kill some Valley Guards, try to get some clue scrolls and do them. So yeah, on my third and sixth medium clue scroll, I got Ranger boots. And that was back when Ranger boots were about 19 mil each. And it just, I mean, I think my bank was worth maybe 2 mil when I got my first pair. So that just, multiplied my bank by 10. And then literally the next day, I got another pair of Rangers. So I instantly just got hooked on Clue Scrolls. Like these are the greatest things ever. The excitement of opening a casket, just going around the world, and that kind of progressed. So when I made an Iron Man, I started getting more into Clue Scrolls, but I still felt like a player that I feel like the average player can't appreciate the clue grind unless you've accepted internally that you're going to do your clues. So what I mean by that is, for example, when somebody's doing Slayer and they get a hard clue, they have to ask themselves every single time, like, am I going to go do this hard clue? And it becomes just this tedious task in your brain of like, do I really want to go D gear? Do I really want to go do this clue scroll? So, and I was dealing with that. And I eventually decided, you know what? I am just going to make up my mind right now that whenever I get a clue scroll, I'm just going to go do it and not think about it anymore. So, bank tag layouts obviously helped with that. So, just getting that annoyance out and just being able to gear up really quickly became really nice. And then the thing I really love about clue scrolls is just how they're unsolvable in a sense. Like there's no perfect route to do your clue scrolls. You run around the entire game. There's always little tips and tricks you can get to make it more efficient. They're quick, they're easy. I actually appreciate the rune light solvers, for puzzle solving. I don't think that has ever led to a detriment in the fun that clue scrolls offer. And on top of that, opening caskets is one of the most satisfying things in this game. As I said earlier, it's just a blast. And obviously, Third Age is what I most desire in this game, especially on Iron Man mode. So, yeah, I've always just been a huge fan, and I'm going to continue to be a fan of them.
Awesome. Yeah, I think one of the things too about being an iron is all the early game irons. You kind of have to be like, okay, I got a hard clue. I have to go do it if I want my black d'hide chaps, or I'm gonna go be mining sand forever.
Mm-hmm.
And same with your MSB and all that stuff. Like a lot of early game irons, I think realize how good hard clues are in the beginning, and then because I know when I made my first Iron Man in 2016, I think. That's when I was like, oh, maybe clue scrolls are more enjoyable, especially like you said with the RuneLight plugin. Because back in the day, it was like, oh, have to have the wiki open, and then I have to find out which step this is and where this coordinate actually is, and then before I don't think you played, but when OS first came out, you had to have how you have to go to the observatory guide to get the sextant and all that stuff for the coordinate clues.
Uh-huh.
Back when OSRS first came out, you had to have those on you.
Yeah, I do remember people
remember that?
saying that. I never played that way, but apparently, yeah, in the very, very early days, you had to have it.
Yeah, and I think all the quality of life changes, plus the fact that no clue is the same, right? You're not going to get, I guess beginners are kind of the anomaly there. You could probably get a beginner that's exactly the same multiple times over a couple hundred. But when it comes to higher tiers, your hards, masters, elites, you're probably never going to get the same clue twice.
Yeah, I would say with easies, maybe here and there, mediums very, very rarely. But yeah, as they go up, the rates just become just crazy. So yeah, I agree.
I think one of the fun things about clues too is even though because I don't know if you know, but I play a level 3 UIM, and I have actually one hard clue completion. I didn't juggle any. I just got extremely lucky with the steps.
And so what are the steps that I'm assuming any area basically you can't get into, any emote step you can't get in, you can't do.
Correct. Yeah. So it had to be everything in the normal games, so no Mauritania, no Prif, no Elven lands. I think I remember I got the Zaya Red Dragons. I think I got the Lumberj Guide or the Hans, whichever one is the hard clue one. And then I think there was a couple more, and I just remember and I had to do all 6 steps as well. It wasn't an early one, and I remember on the 5th step, I hit the dig, and then I opened the next clue, and I was like, no, it's failed now. And then I opened it, and it was something I could do, and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually gonna do this.
So would you be able to kill a double agent? Is there any sort of poison mechanic that you'd be willing to do, or did you really just need to not have any combat involved?
So nowadays with poison dynamite, it's very possible. You could definitely do Sarah wizards and Zami wizards and double agents. Then it just becomes hitting the dynamite and having somewhere to hide.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know if you've used poison dynamite, but it's extremely inaccurate, especially on level 3, because it goes off your fire making level, but it also goes off your a cannon. It goes off your accuracy, whatever you're wearing. So if I'm wearing my graceful and a Bruma torch, I have no accuracy. I'm not gonna hit anything. So you have to have leather gear on or an iron 2H. It same thing as with a 10 HP with a cannon. So it's very frustrating to try and get poison dynamite to hit, especially in a clue scenario where you basically have one try or you're gonna get one shot.
Yeah. That's
So
funny. I didn't know it went off of fire making level. I mean, I did watch some of your, and I actually have your stats pulled up right here. You are about to hit 200 mil fire making pre-grats.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I was looking back through my videos, and about 2 years ago, I had 100 mil. So I've been I've been very
Oh,
slow.
so maybe you're not that close, but you're getting up there, right?
I have been cooking a lot faster this year. Well, I guess fire making a lot faster this year, but so the current plan is one fishing and cooking level every 5 mil fire making XP, so I can break the grind up because I actually like didn't quit, but I only played like maybe like 5 or 10 hours a week for a while because of fire making. I just was like so tired of it.
Mm.
I got the dragon axe, and like that was one of the big grinds for it, right? You know, there was always a reason to open the crates and like have something to look forward to. And then I got it, and I was like, what now?
Oh, I see.
Besides finishing 200 mils, so and I did solos for so long, I can't do them anymore. I like people are like, I did solos of 200 mil, and I'm like, I would rather chop my hands off and eat them.
So is all your construction XP from Winter Todd?
Yeah, because I did mostly solos, so yeah, all the construction XP I have is from Winter Todd.
Okay, interesting. I always thought, theoretically, I know it's different when you're actually doing it. Like you say, doing Winter Todd solos repeatedly has got to be awful. But I always thought it would be cool to make a new account and do Winter Todd solos all the way to 200 mil, and then do Sepulcher and build every single bridge. Because I believe if you make every single bridge in Sepulcher on your way to 200 mil agility, you get around like 20 or 30 mil construction as well, or something. It's something ridiculous, but it would just be so cool theoretically to just have an account that has, around 40 mil construction completely passively.
Yeah, that would be insane. Because then it's like you've already eliminated basically the need to do all the boosts for your Julia box, your Nexus, everything. It's just like it was all free at that point.
Yeah.
Except for the excruciating time and hours at the Winter Todd. So that's the pain I'm feeling currently, which is why, like I said, every 5 mil XP I'm breaking it up. I'm doing a fishing cooking level, and then that way I'm like, doing something else for a while, and then anybody who's watched these or talks to me at all knows I play 2 accounts at once, and for a while I was playing a 42 defense hardcore Iron Man. And then one day I was like, I want to try RS3 again. And I have been playing RS3 on the side ever since now. What are you currently working on in game? What is your current motivation to keep logging in every day?
Well, I will say I still am what I considered and what I said at the beginning, a completionist Iron Man, which is just overall enjoying the game and just progressing my account in any way I see fit. So that consists of skilling. I go for XP goals. They're very minor. I mean, I'm a maxed Iron Man at this point, so XP doesn't really mean much. It's like I'm not getting new unlocks, but I still like that progression in my account of just getting more XP. I love getting new items. I love getting new weapons and gear and all that stuff. Right now, currently, I'm working on getting my Ultor ring from Vardorvis. And I've been in a constant just hunt, I guess, for the Masori body and Torva body. However, the past several months, I've definitely taken a little bit of a more relaxed approach to the game, and I've been enjoying, the summer months and spending a lot more time outside. But generally speaking, I'm still hunting those best in slot items and pretty much, just progressing my account. I've not really been too focused on collection log. I am almost 1150 in the collection logs, but it's not something I'm necessarily competing at right now, but it is something I, passively want to go for continually. There's a lot of things that are really easy. For example, Castle Wars and Trouble Brewing, I haven't even touched yet. So there's like a lot of free slots that I could get eventually.
Yeah.
The other thing I really care about is clue scrolls. I am rank 1 elite clues for irons and rank 2 for hards. And long-term goal is to actually get rank 1 hards because rank 1 actually de-ironed, but he's stuck at 12,500 hards. So who knows? Maybe 1 year I can pass that and claim my rightful spot as rank rank 1 hards. And something that continually motivates me for that as well is one of my all-time long-term goals is to complete a third age set.
That
So
is a long-term goal.
yeah, it's very long-term. I do have 4 pieces, which I believe is currently tied for the most third age pieces of any Iron Man. I think there's about 3 or 4 irons that have 4 pieces at this point, but I don't believe any iron has 5. Not that I've ever seen or heard.
What
So,
would be your dream set, really quick?
okay, so I have a kite shield, plate body, mage robe bottom, and van braces. Van braces were my most recent. It's kind of a little bit bittersweet, but I would say on so at this point I could get plate legs or a mage top to kind of complete that, at least the torso and leg set of a piece or of a set.
Yeah.
So I honestly think I'd be more excited for the robe top, only because I don't know, man. Walking around with a third age, like at least 2 of 4 mage pieces of a third age set just seems absolutely insane. But I do have a kite shield, so at the same time, plate legs I think would be right up there with it. Yeah, I don't know. I think plate legs would be the choice, but I don't know. I would say maybe mage, even though I think mage was always my least favorite set years back. I think range was the the set I really wanted the most, but I only have van braces from that set. So any set I get, I'd be happy with, and that is just a long-term goal. That would be really cool. And no Iron Man's gotten even close to it yet. So
Yeah, it'd definitely be like amazing to be one of the first to complete a third age set, just like for the fact that you could now walk around doing it. And not only that, but it'll be like, hey, that was me. I did that.
yeah, I am the second Iron Man to fully complete a gilded set. So like the classic full gilded, which is really cool. I don't have every single gilded piece, but I do have the full classic set. And the only other Iron Man to have completed that was Phrygian, who was the rank 1 hards who de-ironed. So currently the only active Iron Man with a full gilded set, which I'm pretty prideful of, as you can tell.
Absolutely.
So
I
yeah.
I mean I would be too. Like I said, like I flexed my 1 hard clue completion. I think there's like 10 total level 3 UIMs who have it done. I think there's only like me and somebody else who are actively doing it. So it's like it's not a big deal, right? But it was still like something fun.
Yep. Yeah, and there's something important about having those long-term goals. I used to have very like they technically were long-term goals, but in my head they were more short-term. Like for example, hunting the Inquisitor's mace. That was a short-term goal of mine that ended up taking almost a year. But like having those items that you really, really, really want keeps me at least personally motivated for the game. Um, and that is the thing that kind of grips you to the game continually, is like you just have to really, really want something. So unfortunately with third age you can only really expect to get a piece every year or two. And if you go a little bit dry, you're looking at several years in between each third age piece, unless you're just nonstop hunting clue scrolls. So unfortunately that kind of drive can lead to burnout of going for specific items that take years apart. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. That's why I kind of stick to the more completionist style, and I just try to embrace other avenues of the game.
Absolutely. And I'm a prime example of that, noting that like I'd never had 200 mil, so I wanted to do fire making, and then I got over halfway, got green log, and I was like, oh, and that was it. That's end of story. But hopefully I'll
Yep.
finish. Hopefully, like I definitely want to finish that and then max the level 3 before I like take a break from it for a while if I ever do. But just try and keep it consistent and keep myself at a good pace that I'm not gonna like never want to play again after 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things we've talked about so far is some of the things you're known for, and that was of course what we just talked about with some of the clue stuff, Obviously being the Saebae cast originator. And what was your inspiration for starting your own podcast in the beginning?
So there were a few podcasts that I really enjoyed listening to before I ever started the Saebae cast. That was the Hexus podcast is, I think, the prominent one that I used to listen to even back before I really started even watching Twitch that regularly. So this is back late 2015. I started listening to the Hexus podcast, and I was just interested in it because there's something just special about listening to people that are absolute just demons at a video game and really care about it and don't give a fuck about what other people think.
For sure.
There's something exciting about that. It's like a your own little world where you can escape reality, listen to some people that are taking this virtual world very seriously, and hear their mindset and hear like what they think about the game. And so that podcast was always something special to me. Randy, he's a good friend of mine. He's just like, when I think of original podcasters, I think of Randalicious. That's like the original OSRS podcaster in my head. But other than that, I started listening, just here and there to OSRS podcasts with Rice Cup, Rakesy, and Mint Mad Cow. And that was another podcast that I would listen to, especially with like certain guests I was always really interested in. And it got to a point where, I should also mention the Erudite podcast and just those Iron Man podcasts uploaded on Lelador's channel and Iron Vatty's channel. Like, those were always amazing. I always looked up to those guys. Lelador, Iron Cub has an amazing account. Say Aloe, he quit. His account got hacked.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember, like, I used to watch Iron Body's videos as well. I sometimes I really miss those like super high level mindset players that were like doing good content and like just fleshing it out.
Yep.
And something about it.
There really is. There's just, first of all, it's a relic at this point. It's like a time capsule in the past of seeing what the game looked like and what people's mindsets were on certain aspects of the game. And you got players like Iron Vatty and Iron Flynn even, and Situation, and just all those like super old Iron Men that just took the game really seriously. And it was back more when skilling was a lot more prominent. There wasn't, this is back before Raids 1 was even released. They were talking about, what Chambers is going to bring out, and this is back when they were actually going to come out with a maxed, or kind of like the Masori version. They were going to come out with a new and improved Armadillo in the first concepts of Chambers, and so they were polling that, and it's just cool to listen to and hear how the community, especially listening to how the community's changed over time. So my desire to start my own podcast was simply just talking to gamers, it was initially supposed to just be like me talking to random players that I thought, were interesting and had something going on in the game that would be fun to talk about, and just have debates over certain pieces of content and just ideate about potential updates in the future. Then it started kind of gravitating more toward content creators, and I would get JMods on here and there. And then it just became, anybody in the community, players, content creators, JMods, streamers, everything. And it just, like, I think we were talking before the recording started. We were talking about, how you started your podcast, Mayfield and Friends, and it's like, it starts off with just, you talking to a few people that you kind of already know, but it kind of starts branching out once you get a few episodes under your belt. So that's kind of like what happened with me. And it's just been a really cool little journey, and I want to continue it for years to come.
Who was like, I guess, were there any JMods that you really wanted to get on that like did say yes? Like in like the early days, was that like ever something you really wanted to get on? Was a JMod in general? And then like now you've had quite a few of them on, right? I don't remember how many so far. Oh, it's been like, I know you've had a couple of them on twice. I don't know.
Yeah, in the early days, so the first JMod I had on was Mod Arcane, and then I had Mod Husky on a few weeks afterward, and I just remember being incredibly excited to have asked Mod Arcane to come on, and he was just like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." So that, it's like a little bit of like a confidence booster of like, okay, like, I don't have to get on my hands and knees and beg people to come on. I can just ask, and they can be excited about it. And there is, something a little bit less intimidating about an audio only podcast. Unfortunately, with audio only podcasts, they're not quite as um, captivating because, you're just, there's no faces to look at. So
Yeah.
just naturally, but there are a lot of pros to that. And one of them is being able to get almost anybody on that's willing to at least talk. Like, for example, getting Hey Jason was a really cool guest to have on, just talking to the rank 2 overall. And that would have never happened if, wanted to be a face cam cast. Uh, it could have happened. I know there's a few podcasters. I know Cedo has his PVM Spotlight cast, and he'll have his face cam on, and occasionally another guest will. But you got the mixture of like, okay, he has his face cam on, but 3 other guests in the call don't, and that I guess can work at some point, but it just doesn't capture the whole feel of like, okay, this is a face cam cast. So I decided to just go full on streamline audio only from here on out, even if guests wanted to have video. So, but yeah, Jmod casts in general are just really, really fun because you get to talk to the people creating the game and hearing their thoughts. And it's always extremely refreshing when you hear a Jmod talk about his personal views of the game that aren't exactly in line with the team, although they're going to still, move forward with what the team's decision is. At least I can hear what their own takes are. And it's just like, okay, we got to go down a route with the game. The team has to decide. The community decides with them, generally speaking. And it's always just cool knowing that not everyone is fully, in agreement with all these things, but they want still the best for the game. And that's the same with me. It's like I make rambles, I make Saebae casts, I have very strong takes on certain things. But at the end of the day, if my personal take on something doesn't isn't accepted by the community, that's fine. I still, at the end of the day, want what's best for the game. And what hurts me a little bit, and I see it with JMods also, I've had private DMs with JMods that like they'll even agree with some of my takes on some videos, and they just realize like, hey, I mean, unfortunately, like I'm with you, but the community wants this, and then I'll have Jmod in particular, I won't name names, but like just saying like they're like they'll understand where I'm coming from, for example, especially in regards to the Scar Essence mine. But it's like there's so much at play here. Even if you have a certain vision of something like make skilling better and just do all this, there's so many little things that would need to be changed and need to be pulled in order for that vision to come to fruition. Whereas just making a quick sort of band-aid fix that kind of gets the gist of something, even if that's not like in like the best case scenario for the game, at least it's something that the majority of players want, and it's not going to absolutely destroy the game. And so it's just refreshing hearing those JMod takes of like, okay, they're not clueless about the game. They're very aware, and some of the time updates just need to come out. And that's just kind of the name of the game. It's like this game isn't always going to be catered toward. It's just you have to find a balance when you're looking at Jagex. You're looking at the old school team in general. You're looking at the game. There's so many the player base is just massive, and you've got to cater to so many different player types and different account types and just mentalities and early level and end game players. It's a tough balance to strike, but they're aware of it. So
Absolutely. And, coming off the heels of what you just said about the Scar Essence mine, that has recently passed the poll.
yep.
So for those who may not have like finished your whole video or I think it was like an hour long, right?
There was a few different videos I made on that.
So I know I watched the one where you were. I watched most of the one where you were responding to comments about it, but I don't think I ever finished the initial one. So I guess in regards to that, for anybody who may have missed that, like the initial reasoning for the Scar Essence Mine was basically to keep up charges on weapons, like your for especially for Iron Man, for like your Scythe, your Sang, your Shadow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, for those who missed, what about this specific update kind of like stood out to you that you were like, this has got to be talked about for like not just 10 minutes, but like this is something that needs to be brought up for an extended period of time?
Well, so I made a few different videos. The first video I made was just, I didn't have any of my thoughts put together, because generally when I read a new news post that comes out, I mean, I just wake up in the morning and I just start recording and I just talk about it. So
Yeah.
first video got a lot of people upset because of my just very strong and aggressive takes opposing the proposed update of the Scar Essence Mine. I thought it was ridiculous, especially just the numbers that were put in place, 250,000 bloods per hour.
Yeah.
Uh,
Obnoxious.
it's very obnoxious. And, if people, the argument I always get for that is just, well, you have to pay GP. So, it doesn't matter what the number is because there's GP involvement. And then I just say, what, at this point, why not just have a buy X option in the stores? And then people will say, well, we're trying to get rid of Shopscape. But the Shopscape is not simply stores existing and being able to buy stuff, because they're trying to keep that. Like the whole Scar Essence Mine update is in line with spending GP on runes. So Shopscape, in my definition of it, is just the simple action of buying an essential resource the most efficient way possible, but the process is very tedious, which is hopping worlds and spam clicking and competing with other players.
Yeah.
So, although in my perfect world of this game, which is just my own opinion, and I try to illustrate it, I fail to every time, but it's the idea that skilling can be better. There's a huge uh just there's huge potential for skilling in the future to become very fun, very challenging, very engaging. It doesn't have to match what PVM is by any means, but there are ways to make skilling extremely addicting and fun, and something that people want to do. There's a desire to do it. And one of the things that is just really upsetting is these band-aid solutions that inevitably will hurt. If Jagex at this point wants to come out with like a new rune crafting method or something like that. Now, even though there's GP involvement with the Scar Essence Mine, there still is that subconscious feeling of, oh, this isn't quite at the 250,000 bloods that I could get. So this method kind of seems like shit. Where previously, before the Scar Essence Mine was announced, the max amount of blood runes you could get per hour was, just under like 11,000 or something, or maybe 13,000, something like that. Fully efficiently, with the outfit, blood essence, everything. We could have come out with an update that doubled that, with a new challenging, really fun, engaging method that, has a cost involvement with it. That, in my idea of the cosmic underworld, it involves the catalytic essence, and that replaces rune drops on certain monster tables and replaces it with these catalytic essence that are the charging tool to access the cosmic underworld, that allows you to craft, potentially 25,000 to 40,000 blood runes per hour.
Yeah.
And other catalytic runes. And with a method like that now, if that were to be proposed, it's just like, why bother? 25,000, that's dog shit numbers. I can craft 10 times that amount just with some money. And then you have a really fun reason like to grind that money, which is just do more PVM. So I don't know. It passed. It's coming out into the game. I wish Jagex had just been a little bit more patient before polling it and just saying like, hey, we can adjust this number. Like this number doesn't need to be 250,000. It seems like the majority of players would have rather seen the Scar Essence mine come out than just a buy X option or have nothing happen. But I think just the concern is skilling is looked at very poorly, generally speaking, and people don't want anything to do with it when you've sort of been captivated by the PVM scene and just the just sheer amount of resources they've poured into PVM updates over the years. I mean, PVM over the past 10 years has absolutely skyrocketed in fun, engagement, rewards, challenge. I mean, it's just on a different level compared to skilling. And
Yeah.
although skilling doesn't need to become just a headache and just high risk, high reward, there's, it doesn't need to be anything like PVM, but there is something with skilling that hasn't been explored, and that is the just the rhythm of skills. For example, I brought this up in one of the videos, like the thing that people really like are really fun rhythmic elements in PVM. For example, I bring this one up is, you're going to TOB, you enter Verzik, you finish phase 1 with the pillars, and then you enter phase 2. And there's Verzik in the middle of the room, and she's bouncing. And every 4 ticks, you swing your scythe. And even though that's a very simple mechanic, there is a little bit of skill. You have to kind of get in touch with the rhythm of it, of attacking every 4 ticks with a 5-tick weapon and dodging some crabs that randomly spawn. And the problem is, like, that's a really enjoyable little gameplay loop for the most part. It only lasts a little bit, but if you had a skilling method like that, the last thing anybody would want is, you having to like knife log every single time you hit Verzik. Like, it just to imagine a method where that's a skilling method where you're just continually going back and forth every 4 ticks. The best skilling methods we have, in my personal opinion, are the rhythmic ones. For example, 3-tick 4G is fun. Unfortunately, there's way too much clicking involvement. Just the fact that knife logging is essential for every single new rock you mine. I think 2-tick teaks is a better example of, and people love 2-tick teaks. Even casual players that have tried it out love it because it's rhythmic. You got that flow. You can kind of get into that flow state of it. Same thing with 2-tick fishing. 2-tick fishing is extremely chill. You're only clicking every 2 ticks.
I love 2-tick fishing. It's like you said, it's just like it's one of those things I can just like not zone out, but like I don't have to focus, and I know I'm getting like really good rates. I'm not like losing anything doing this.
Yep. And you're just in a flow state. Like you can get into it, and there's no pressure. There's no like random damage splash. You're not going to get killed by doing this. It's just a free flowing method that can just really get you hooked, and you're getting good XP rates. Every time you click, you get a fish, generally speaking. Like, maybe it's not quite that high, but with 2-tick teaks, it's very high. It gets up to like, 70-80% of every single time you click the tree, you get the log. And there's something addicting about that. And I think there's so many unexplored options when it comes to skilling that we could involve this stuff without the excess need of clicking. And that, I end up always going to the gnome cube, which is not my idea. I feel like I need to like almost say that initially. The gnome cube was brought up by 2 players that posted on Reddit about the skill idea of mastery, which was just basically like an artisan clone, but I think executed in a little bit better way. But one of the rewards from mastery was a gnome cube, which essentially just removes one of the clicks, getting into a 3-tick skilling timer, basically starting the 3-tick skilling timer. So instead of having to knife log or herb tar, you just click once on this new item. And it doesn't need to be a gnome cube. It could come organically from the game, maybe a Salastrus bark 2.0, some other name. It could come out naturally. It could even be a holiday item potentially, but something that eliminates that unnecessary click. And so with these methods like 3-tick 4G and 1.5-tick teaks and 3-tick gem mining and 3-tick fishing and all these other things, Hunter even, you get rid of an unnecessary click, and that in turn, it just makes the method slightly more enjoyable for long-term hours.
Yeah.
And because most people can agree, if you've ever done 3-4G, there is wrist strain involved. And anybody that disagrees with that, just because you've gotten completely used to it, I mean, you can understand that, adding another click, let's just imagine it was knife log log potentially. Like, you can imagine adding additional clicks is going to increase the amount of wrist strain on your wrist. So the whole idea behind it is get rid of that unnecessary click and allow the method to flourish as a fun, rhythmic, enjoyable method that doesn't just have an unnecessary element of difficulty added to it, which in turn will add more incentive to do these kind of tick manipulation methods. And in the future, if we ever add more rhythmic skilling methods, we already have this item that kind of is just utilized in all these methods. And so I don't know. One of my fears is that if we don't release a sort of gnome cube, or if we don't understand that clicking a lot isn't the thing that's making skilling methods fun, but actually the rhythm and the strategy involved in these methods is what's making a really enjoyable method, then we can never truly excel in these new options of skilling. So and this is all in my head. It's like I'm just thinking, for example, if we okay, so one thing I really want is in Brimhaven, there's a gold ore horseshoe
Yep.
in the middle of the island. And there's always been a problem with gold ore. So they come out with things like Volcano and just, trying to help with the shops. And so trying to make shops less AIDS. And my idea was, okay, just this is just for gold ore. I mean, imagine instead of the obnoxious success rates of gold ore when you're going around mining gold, like it takes so long to mine a normal gold rock around the game, and the respawn timers are extremely slow as well. So first of all, just make those balanced to the point where they're almost like granite success rate and granite respawn time. So you get 65 XP per gold rock. So if in theory, every 3 ticks you can mine a gold rock, I mean, in theory, what would be cool is to, have a high enough success rate where, in theory, if you were to mine, gold rocks for an hour, you could get about 2,000 because there's 6,000 ticks in an hour. Divided by 3 for every 3 ticks, you're getting about 2,000. So let's just say, 1,600 gold rocks, and that would be about an 80% success rate. So you have an 80% success rate, and you've made it so there's a gnome cube introduced into the game, and now you have this little horseshoe gold where you go around, you click the gnome cube once, you click on the next rock, click the gnome cube, click the next rock. So you got this nice little 3-tick pattern going. You're just walking around this little circle, getting about 1,600 gold ore per hour, and a really nice about, I don't know, 115, 120k mining XP per hour. So you've come out with just a very simple, very old school method of obtaining gold. It's really chill. And now you got this guy that's there, or maybe even a bank deposit box that, I was thinking of a guy named Files or something, just those Files guys where you just
Yeah.
use your
Yeah.
gold on the guy, and you just have a little bit of a cash stack in your inventory, and you just use your gold ore that you mined every time you get about 26, note it up, continue the little cycle. And now you've got this extremely old school method that's easy on the wrist because you've introduced a gnome cube. You got very high success rates, and you're mining a healthy amount of like 1,600 gold per hour. And I just think little methods like that can really add to the old schoolness of the game and just add another. I don't know. There's just something very simple about that. And that's not all I would advocate for. I think there's really fun mini games that you could also come out with that are more rhythmic. But yeah, it's just a shame that for the Scar Essence mine, we just come out with a Band-Aid solution that's essentially just Shopscape in a weird form. So
Absolutely.
long-winded answer, but yeah.
No, I mean, it was a great answer. And I wanted to expound on that with, like, you kind of mentioned the end their mini games, but I think one of the dangerous ways that they're trying to go is just minigame everything without without that rhythmic solution. Because there's really nothing rhythmic about Wintertod. Temperos is a little bit better, and I would say Guardians of the Rift they got probably mostly right compared to the other two.
Mm.
And I guess I've never done Zolcano, so I can't really speak on if that is like an enjoyable thing to do for ores or crystal shards or whatever people do it for, besides the pet and the crystal tool seed. But that's the big thing is I hope they try and not go with is every skill has a minigame, and it's inefficient to not do that minigame because you're going to get this passive resources, some other things. And
Yeah. No, I mean, okay, so for example, we think about Volcano, and some people really love that mini game, but it's very boring. It's extremely boring. There's a huge number of issues with Volcano. One of them is Jagex is just they've now forced, regardless of how many players you get involved into a Volcano match, you're forced to do 3 phases of it. Even if you have plenty of Tephra and you can just chuck it at it, it will it'll literally cut that whole section of like mining it to like a split second if you have like 20 people in the room, because it forces you to do a triple phase Volcano, which is just completely unnecessary, completely stupid. Get rid of those arbitrary restrictions. The other thing is just there's no real rhythm, and the only rhythm there ever was 1.5 ticking Volcano on week 1 of its release, which they just patched. They just got rid of it because I'm not going to get completely, there's so many reasons why it was a horrible update to do, but I understand the main reason was people were trying to get MVP, and MVP gave you like double loot. It was, if you're MVP, you're the only person that gets the pet chance. And so they just completely dumbed down the entire minigame. And imagine Volcano, for example, was one of the DT2 bosses that was released. Like, imagine how upset people would have been for something like Volcano being like imagine that was like the Duke version. I don't know if you've ever done Duke. It's like that.
I was just gonna say, I think from what I've like seen videos on and people talked about, is people hate Duke the most because of like the initial like herblore mining thing you have to do with it.
Yeah. So I would almost slightly compare Volcano to Duke, but Duke does a much better job. It's a little bit more simple. It's just quicker. Imagine a Volcano solo was like the new thing from like a new boss they released. There's no rhythm to it. You just click on the rock that's lit up. You click over here to this furnace. You click over there to imbue it, and then you chuck your rocks at this thing and try to dodge some random portals. It's on paper, without ever interacting with it, it seems like, oh, this is a cool little loop. But you've eliminated so much of like the intricacies that you could add to something. The playing field in general is just massive, unnecessarily massive.
Yeah.
And like there's just no rhythm to anything. Like it's hard for me to really illustrate my points clearly, but there's something that's missing from skilling methods. And generally speaking, if you can master a new skilling minigame within a matter of minutes, they failed. Like they failed that minigame. Most bosses that are really fun and engaging take hours. I mean, take like tens of hours potentially to really get a feel and really start feeling that mastery coming in of like, okay, I can understand this boss now. Like I'm starting to understand these intricacies. I'm starting to get the muscle memory down. I'm starting to actually feel really good and comfortable in this boss. Skilling, no, it's just you play it for 20 seconds, you understand what's going on, they have to deal with it for the next 100, 200 hours. And it's upsetting to know that Jagex goes down that route because they want everybody to feel welcome and to make it so everyone feels it's fully accessible on release and everyone can enjoy it within the first few seconds. like that is just not the way to have an engaging, fun, thrilling skilling method be introduced into the game. So it just worries me. Now, some of my ideas, like the gold horseshoe, is just a simple iteration of, there's nothing really going on there, but having that kind of rhythm, I think, is important with potential future updates. And I don't know. I guess I just worry because I can see in the next few years them continually making PVM better and better and better. And then skilling just falls by the wayside. And the only thing that people want from skilling updates is higher XP per hour,
Yeah.
which is like the last thing you should be incentivizing. Just here, we all know you hate skilling. So the only thing that'll pass is if we just make this really shitty skilling update come out that just better XP, and people will vote yes to it because it's better XP, because you just want to get it over with as soon as possible. And that's what we saw with forestry. That's at least what I saw. Is forestry sucks gameplay wise, but it's higher XP than was previous, so everyone just loves it. If
And then
that was lower XP, everyone would fucking hated it.
oh yeah, and I think the biggest thing about that too is like when forestry had that initial release, right? Um, I had LOH3 on the cast a little while ago, so we chat back and forth sometimes, and they had sent me when JCW was uploading his Max Cape series with the forestry update, and it sent me like on RuneLite he was getting like 450k an hour with the world hopping saplings events.
Yeah.
And I was like, how did they let something like that enter the game? How?
Mm-hmm.
And then you think about some of the updates that they've messed up. I think one of the biggest, like, funniest, glaring updates that like broke something was, I don't remember what update it was, but there was like T-bows spawning on the ground next to the farming guild for a while.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it was like not super long, but long enough where like people were getting them.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to see like what their plan is, what they've said in the poll, and then what actually happens, and then the cold fixes and hot fixes that we see for the next week. So
yeah.
I think a better and more open understanding that the players can have of an update before it actually goes live, like more betas, and even like I would even be fine if they were like, we have invite only betas for people like in our Discord who want to test things for us, like people who will take the time out of their day to make sure that what's coming into the game. And I don't know, maybe incentivize it with like, hey, if you help us beta test this update or this boss, we'll give you like a bond or two, so that way it's not like I'm just giving them my time for free. I don't know if that's like silly or not, but it just makes no sense how so many things like make it in the game, break things. We see insane experience rates, or there was another update. Was it what Desert Treasure came out? Couldn't like they not drop the rings for like the first couple hours?
Well, they just decided to go down a different route with drop mechanics for those rings in general. So you have this invisible drop where in order to get the ring piece, you have to roll that invisible roll 3 times and then you get it. So nobody was getting a ring for like every single player was going hundreds of kills without getting a ring piece. So it's like, what's going on here? And then they were like, don't worry, it's fine. But we have seen things like that, what you're saying, with Fasani's Nightmare, for example. Fasani's was released the first 8 hours, nobody could get drops because they forgot to add drops into the update.
Yeah. So it's like,
and then they lie about it. They aren't fully transparent about it. That's another concern. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ. No, we can't trust you.
And so, like, would that be something you yourself, or would you know somebody who'd be like, who would join this Discord or whatever, and like incentivize players to help them beta test things before they're released into the game, so things aren't completely just out of the water? And obviously, there'd have to be some kind of like NDA thing. People can't talk about it until it actually releases, or so on and so forth.
Well, I think for the most part, I think that's generally overblown. Is just, I understand that most updates come out and there's something broken with it, but it's never anything like extremely bad. I mean, I understand the forestry one was bad. I just think no matter what, there are very, very smart players that will collaborate instantaneously when a method drops and find ways to abuse it. I mean, it's just with the with the play testers that Jagex has hired, nobody there generally. I mean, their whole job is to try to find some way to break it. But like when you have you know tens of thousands of players and very, very smart, brilliant players that have been playing this game for the last 20 years. I mean, it's just like there are average players that are very smart and understand the game's mechanics inside and out. And so just like the hopping, for example, I mean, that's probably just not something that they could have even tested anyway. In a, like, for
Yeah,
example, like
that's
just the
that's
hop,
fair.
like you can't really just test that unless it's live in the game. It's like, okay, now we got actually 100,000 people participating in this game. How can we abuse this now? So, and I generally don't think it's that big of a deal for Jagex to come out with something that's broken. Either it's not working as intended or it's way too good if it's only there for a day or two. I think in the moment it seems absolutely terrifying, and it's like, holy shit, like every single second that passes by with this update in the game is just breaking. But then you see a few weeks later, like, oh, that those couple days of busted XP rates or busted rewards, it wasn't really that crazy. In fact, in a sense, it was actually the most exciting thing we've seen in a while. Because,
Yeah.
like, for example, Winter Todd being first released, I wasn't playing it, but well, actually, I did on very release. I wasn't grinding it, but getting 10 Snapdragon Seeds from a fucking crate was just absolutely insane and wild, and it's just exciting. It's completely broken and needs to be fixed ASAP, but there is something kind of appealing about just an update dropping and understanding Jagex's history with like updates and just realizing there is something to abuse here. Let's figure it out as quick as possible, and then things do get fixed. And I'm like, you know what? If that's the route Jagex wants to go down, where it's like, everything's probably not perfect, but they'll figure it out and they'll yell at us on Twitter, and then we'll fix it within the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but
That's fair.
yeah.
And I guess moving like straight in like through this same funnel we're kind of into right now, what's your thought on them releasing potentially the coins for Chambers? Like Chambers has been out for 6-7 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're finally trying to push away where people can more easily scout raids. Like,
Yep.
what do you think of them trying to go back to content so late and try and quality of life it now?
I think it's really good. I've always been a huge fan of them looking back at just unnecessarily tedious aspects of old content. Just like, what is
Yeah.
going on here? And scouting in Chambers has just notoriously been known as just the most AIDS thing ever, especially when you're just, for example, like a person that's trying to grind a Tebow on his Iron Man. It's just like the constant running in and out of a raid to try to get a good raid or just a runnable raid. It's like, oh my God. And so, they come out with challenge mode and it's good. It's just I don't particularly find it that enjoyable because it's just every fucking room and they're very long winded, but at least it's just you go in and you know what to expect. And personally, I think the route they're going down, I read the blog just briefly when it was first dropped, and I reread it last week. And they're trying to come out with something where it's like there's a cost to get a layout of your choice, and you'll get these coins or little tokens to get a nice scout. I just think that's very convoluted, and in my opinion, I think honestly, I think you should just be able to choose your layout. If there's a cost to that, that's fine. But simply just go to the board, select what rooms you want. And if there's a 50K fee, 100K fee, 250K fee for your choice of room, or if it's completely free, I'm okay with it. I would not be opposed to it just being completely free and just simply rebalancing some of the point room. The room's points distribution. So for the rooms that, well, first of all, thieving is just one of the worst rooms ever created. It's just fucking boring. Ice Demon is another one that's just like, holy shit, like let's just move past this as quick as possible. Like there's too much chopping. It's just boring.
Yeah.
So, and most people agree with that. Obviously, everything's subjective, but like instead of maybe incentivizing, like, oh, let's try to get Ice Demon to just artificially be more points so people will do it. It's like, why not just make the room more enjoyable? So with thieving, for example, in CM thieving, and I believe just thieving in general, there's a 50-50 shot that you get grubs or not. Like, why is that? Why can't it just be 100%? Like, why? Like, are we just so under this spell of like it needs to be 50%? Like, why can't it just be 100? Why can't you just get the fucking grubs? And why is there constant failures? Like, I understand, maybe there could be a need for a lockpick and it helps out things, and the grub amounts can vary. That's fine. But the simply opening chests, opening 6 in a row and not having received anything, and you're just like, holy shit, like this is incredibly boring. It's completely slowed down the pace of this raid. Like things like that need to be adjusted in general. And I don't think it's I don't know. I don't want to be dogmatic that things need to be this way all the time. And I think scouting is one of those things where people think that we can't just completely revolutionize how you get into chambers. I simply think you should just be able to make a layout. You're good to go. Go in. If there's a coffer, if there's like something where it's like, oh, you purchase this raid layout, fine, make it cost a little bit of money. But stop with the tokens, stop with the convolution. Just literally let people just enjoy raids without any element of scouting or any element of just, oh my God, I got to do this stupid randomized layout again. Like, just let people choose. That's my take on it. I think it's ridiculous that, I mean, I'm glad they're at least addressing it, but I think the way they're going about it is just, it's messy.
It's an extra step.
Yeah, it's messy.
Fantastic. And then I think there's one more big thing coming out in the end of the year, and that is, of course, Leagues 4, Trailblazer Reloaded. So I know you played a little bit of Leagues 3, right?
Yeah, just for a few days.
And you weren't really a huge fan, is that correct?
No, not. I mean, I think that's just my personal take on leagues. Is I don't enjoy progress that gets deleted.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess saying that, do you have any interest in playing Trailblazer Reloaded? Because it's because did you play the original Trailblazer?
No, I didn't, but I know people absolutely loved it, and I never got to enjoy it. But I did watch it a lot, and it did seem fun.
Do you have any plans to play that or make videos on it at all?
Yeah, I think I do have plans to at least log in and mess around with it. I think some of the cosmetics being introduced into the main game look really cool as well. So that's definitely something I'm planning on getting involved with. I'm not sure if I'll be making videos on it necessarily. I might, but I also might just want to enjoy it for my own sake and just I don't know. And I think the reason Trailblazer is so successful is because there's just more of your choices actually meaning something. I think
Yeah,
that's generally what they were getting at. Is like you have these permanent choices, and that affects how you're playing in a very substantial degree. So I'm excited for it.
absolutely. I was actually waiting to see which after Leagues 3 in my head I was like, I don't know where else they can go from here. So I wonder which league they're going to reprise first. And I think we'll see I think Leagues 5 will be interesting to see like what they take on that depending on how obviously Trailblazer Reloaded does. I'm a huge Leagues fan. Um and then all that being said, do you have any plans on like which regions you might look at now with some of the newer updates out, or do you kind of just gonna go by what sounds fun to you?
Uh, depends. It depends if there's. I think for the most part, I'll probably be going the PVM route. I think with at least on Leagues 3, I just wanted to just skill and not have to do any quests or any PVM. My initial goal was to max, and I just burnt out.
Yeah,
But I think this time I'm just really going to focus on just being able to kill stuff with some extremely busted weapons. So I'm not actually sure what my areas are going to be. If they were to make chambers, I think I'll probably choose Zaya for the most part, just because it's a massive continent that
so
you're
much to
getting.
do. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, hard though, because I don't know. I Zay is probably guaranteed in there, and then probably where Priff or whatever, or wherever like the Elflands. If you get Zulrah and CG and stuff, I think that would also be pretty essential.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, maybe Kandarin, just something simple. I don't really know. That's a good point.
I know, because I only ask because I know people at this point knowing what Trailblazer Reloaded is going to be like. We've already played Trailblazer, so I'm sure there's going to be tons of people like already saying, "Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to get points based on like because obviously you can go on the wiki and see what all the old tasks were. I'm sure there's not going to be a whole lot of different ones. Obviously, with some new content coming out, there definitely will be. But now people have an idea of like what is going to be the most fun for me. What are my most fun 3 regions to unlock, aside from, of course, having Karamja and Misthalin just starting out. So I was curious if you had done any theory crafting or talked about it with anybody at all.
No.
That's kind of fun though too, in its own sense, being able to just log in and be like, what am I going to do today? That's not just, play the regular RuneScape. I get to do something a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, no, I think there is something good about having a game plan when it comes to leagues. It kind of sets goals right from the get-go. I think that was actually one of my problems with Leagues 3 is I didn't know anything I was doing. I was going into it completely blind with no goal, no real vision besides potentially maxing. But
yeah,
I think for this one, I'm going to go in with a outline of, okay, I want to PVM in a really fun way. What are the bosses that I think would be the most fun with like a 1-tick blowpipe, for example, or just something just absurd?
Yeah.
Like I might even do Mauritania just to get a Scythe if Scythe is out of control, but yeah.
I think with TOA, it kind of makes me want to do Desert this time.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zaya, Priff, and Desert would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I was thinking of. I'm just not a huge fan of TOA. It's a good raid. Like, don't get me wrong. It's just for me personally, there's something. I don't know. Maybe it's just exhausting. For some reason in my head, it just feels exhausting. There's too many. I was the one literally advocating for this before TOA was ever released to add, random puzzles.
Yeah.
I think the puzzles generally make the whole raid just feel a lot more slow.
Yeah.
Just my own take on it. Like, I could just imagine there not being any puzzles. Like, imagine you instantly go into Baba, instantly go into Kefri, instantly go into Zabak, and instantly go into Akka. Like that. I feel like that alone would just make the place seem more exciting. Just like, okay, we're instantly in, no bullshit. And I will admit, I think my take on adding puzzles was a mistake. I don't think. I think when it comes to raids, I think puzzles generally slow things down. And I kind of saw that with TOA, which I'm willing to admit. I think puzzles are just get in the way. I think they're obnoxious.
And that's really fair to think. Like, I thought this was something I wanted, and then it happened, and you were like, well, maybe this isn't all it's cracked out to be.
Yeah, it's something like in my head, I think at the time, because I remember even kind of addressing these things with some of the J mods years ago. It's like, I want Raids 3 to have puzzles. Like, I want you to go into a hallway to get to the next room with some sort of puzzle that's, not tedious by any means, but just something that's keeping you engaged. And I don't know. I guess in my head, at least, I was thinking puzzles more like kind of more like the Kefri puzzle room where you just have little simple things. I think they came out with puzzles that are a little triggering, like the pillars that you have to hit in a certain order, which is RNG. It's just annoying. Akka mining is fine, but it's just like you got to move these pillars around that just don't seem as intuitive. And then you got, Baba Monkey Room, which is just a pain in the ass. It's just
It's
3 minutes
miserable.
of just like, it's just 3 minutes of stupidity. I mean, this is just ridiculous. So in my head, when I think of puzzles, I think of like a fucking sepulcher hallway, like one sepulcher hallway, go through it, and boom, if you mess up, you lose a point in the raid that'll like, devalue your loot at the very end. But it's not like a completely separate room where you got to wait for every player to enter this little barrier. It's like, I would imagine, going from bloat into Nilocus, and like just that hallway down, imagine there was some arrows flying at you and just some little boulders falling. You just kind of dodge that. You got to make it so it's not tedious, but just something that's keeping you on your toes, and then you're instantly into the next room. But again, I'm just like, I don't know, maybe that's just obnoxious, and maybe people just don't want to see it. They just want the kill boss, and I think that's fair. And I think I'd actually agree with that more nowadays.
Yeah, and that's the big thing I think about, like, the longer we play, the more sometimes our thoughts change. I'm sure just like this, things you've talked about and myself, even with my friends or whatever, even on the first cast I did almost a year ago, I'm sure things I have are opinions I have on things are very different even now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and that's a big thing too, is you mentioned earlier, like, we're all getting older. The player base we're not getting any younger, right? The amount of casual new players joining this game are probably far less than a lot of other MMOs. It's mostly like, if I had to guess, I'm not, obviously I don't have the stats pulled up, I don't know for sure, but if I had to guess, I would say old school, in my opinion, is probably close to 75% like people who have played RuneScape before in the past,
Oh yeah.
and probably like 30 to 40% people who have continuously played like throughout their whole lives. Although, I say that, and the most people I talk to have like played this game since, like you said yourself, 2004, 5, 6, 7. Like, that was kind of the era when a ton of people started playing, and then we just kind of all played on and off as time went on. Obviously,
Yeah.
with different people such as yourself leaving for a longer period of time, or myself who stopped playing when I went to college for like a year, stuff like that. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
do you think there's anything that Jagex can do to keep a more consistent veteran player base, as well as appeal to like new people coming in? And I guess in saying that, do you think updates like the new Path of Glowfree quest and like the new mid-tier Slayer monster and staff, like, do you think that kind of stuff is helping with that problem we're having?
Yeah, I think, okay, so there needs to be very challenging end game content. There needs to be that, and it
Oh
needs
yeah.
to have a high budget alongside. Like, I think raids really should cater to the very, very high end players. There needs to be something that's like, holy shit, like, I will be there one day, but right now I got to grind. Like, I got to get my stats up. I got to get my gear upgrades better. I think adding mid game stuff that's genuinely challenging but not ridiculous is the way to go. And I think, they mentioned they haven't really given any details of this new, end game, or sorry, mid game little boss encounters and stuff like that. They need to add that stuff, and those generally are the things I think that can have invocations and things that you can kind of push your limits. But I truly think that raids need to be end game stuff, very end game stuff. This is my own personal take. I love, the freedom with the invocation system. I personally think some of the invocations are just stupid, but a lot of them, at least make sense and add a little bit of variety to the raid. But for an end game raid, I think an invocation system is just not the way to go. And I just simply think most raids that come out should be more like TOB, where it's a set difficulty. It's a bitch to complete initially, like for the first few weeks until it starts getting solved, and you got to have very, very high level players with very high skill levels to be able to complete it. And I think there is definitely room for adding like mid-level raids that aren't necessarily considered raids, but they're, multiple bosses. Maybe there's like 3 or 4 bosses in there that maybe can involve an invocation system. And that's the thing that's really preparing you for this. Holy shit. Raids 4 comes out. This is so fucking difficult, but it's fun. It's fair. But I need some absolute gamers on my team, and we're gonna, grind this out. And I think that's generally the way we should go about it. And I think there's so much room for mid-level stuff that can be kind of like the TOA. I'm glad they made TOA. So this is nothing really against TOA. I think it was important almost to release TOA to bridge the gap between, because there was just such a huge gap between like going from Barrows to TOB. I mean, there's just nothing really to bridge it either, besides just playing a lot and, just trying to get involved in the community as much as possible. But there wasn't anything in game that organically is getting you from one to the other, besides just playing a shit ton and just, kind of your own volition, just going about it and just having the will to get better and better and better, which I guess is a fair way to go about it anyway. But invocation systems and higher level dungeons for mid level to upper level, I think, is the way to go about it. And I really want to see, because you were saying what can keep the veterans around. It's like, we need very, very high level raids where you're coming out with truly best in slot weapons and gear that not a level 90 combat noob can just leech with 5 of his, kind of casual friends, just put on some invocations for the very highest level raid in the game and like, oh, okay, I'll get all my best in slot rewards now and I'll just kind of skip all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
It needs to be difficult. It needs to be very challenging. It needs to be like, you need to have the best of the best already to get involved in it, or else you're going to get fucked up. Like, I want to see that. I want to see the next raid, which I'm afraid they're not going to go about it, because I don't know. But it would be cool to see a raid where it's like, dude, there are so few people being able to consistently complete this. Raid items are now going for bills, like that would be so exciting. But I don't know. That's just my take on it. I think, but I think there's always going to be room for those mid-level dungeons and raids and things like that can be introduced that do have high level, items coming out that aren't technically best in slot, but they are still worth hundreds of mils. What disappoints me is Raid 3 came out and, just the Fangs worth 30 mil and Light Bearers worth 2 mil, and just like, these were supposed to be the very best of the best end game items, but everyone can do the piece of content. So it's like, you gotta have a barrier, like, or else things will never have that super prestigious price tag.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing too with the Fang is we saw like the rapier, the blade, like things that had uses before, and now people are just like, wow, I'll just bring my Fang. It's way cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I don't need to go into this topic that much, but just having costs associated with best in slot items, I think, is a good way to go about things. And I've been wrong. I think I've had poor takes where I express how those charges can be implemented. The more time has passed, I've actually kind of changed my view on charged weapons to more of like, this is something that I was talking to Connor, had him on the cast, Con No One, and he and I have been talking over DMs about potentially, how the armor stand in your POH can repair your Barrows armor for a fee? I was just thinking, how cool would it be if, instead of necessarily charges with, a scythe and things. First of all, I don't think a scythe should be charged with runes anymore. I think the main problem and the reason they're trying to buff all these like rune crafting things is, I don't know, maybe it's not the way to have runes charge melee weapons, like best in slot melee weapons. What if they more acted like a Barrows item where you use your scythe a lot, and then a very convenient way is to go to your armor stand in your POH with your scythe, get a significant amount of smithing XP, and pay some GP, and you've either fixed it or charge. I personally think the way to go about it would be to charge it, but maybe you'd have to repair it. I think reparations generally are seen as like a negative, just inconvenience.
Yeah.
But something where like, okay, now you're utilizing your smithing skill to reinforce your weapon that you've been using, and there's a cost associated with it. You don't have to charge it with bloods and vials of blood anymore. And this doesn't even have to be anything with the scythe. But imagine Raids 4 comes out with this new crazy weapon and it doesn't have a price tag attached. Like, I just don't think that's the way to go about it. I think there should be a price tag. And what if that price tag is you having to repair it? And, there's just a coffer that you're charging it with GP, but you go and repair it. You get a little bit of smithing XP every time you do it. And something that feels thematic, something that makes sense, and it's GP. So you're not having to go skill for runes or other stuff to upkeep it, at least for like an Iron Man view. Like, I don't know. There's ways to go about it, but I think there does need to be costs behind best in slot end game weapons.
And I absolutely can agree with like pretty much, I would say like 90% of that, right? I think one thing that I guess I think about the Bofa and the blade, and what they did correctly is having the shards from the content or from the area charge it. I don't think that's what we need every time. An untradeable charge currency and then a full corruption after a certain amount of charges you can get. I just think that like they did that pretty well in the beginning. But I also agree with the statement you made with, I don't think we need to have runes charging melee weapons. It makes sense, obviously, for the Sang and the Shadow. But yeah, for the scythe.
Mage weapons for sure.
Yeah. So it's just one of those, we'll have to see where it takes it. And before I move on to the next topic, I do have, actually, you made me think of this, and that was like the combat triangle we have. Every raid so far has given a quote-unquote best in slot. Obviously, the scythe is kind of niche in that factor that it's not always best in slot. But in when the eventuality comes in Raids 4, what would you think about a tier like 75 hybrid weapon? So it's almost like a salamander. But like you can use it for each combat style, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good as if I brought my Shadow, my T-Bow, or whatever. But it would help you out in, like, say, like, the most obvious case would be like a DKs, where you, obviously, that's old content. You can massacre those things really quickly nowadays. But what would you think about, like, a hybrid weapon coming out? Because I don't think, besides the salamanders, we really don't have any of those.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say a hybrid weapon. I'm not terribly a fan of that idea, but I think there is room for hybrid weapons like salamanders to come out for more mid-level dungeons. I would say, like, personally, for a very end game item, like a best in slot, that's a mixture of all three styles. I feel like no matter what, it's either best in slot or it's not. And if you have a new weapon that's all three styles and it's best in slot at all three of them, or two of them, or one of them, it's going to feel like it's completely outclassing just every other thing that's ever come out. But there is room for like a higher level salamander, for example, that's like from a mid-level, that's just kind of like a neutral thing that it can hit all three styles, and it's not best in slot anywhere, but in situations like DKs or situations like Nilos or something like that, where it's like you just want the convenience factor.
Yeah.
I think there is room for that, but it just cannot be best in slot.
Yeah, and that's why I was like maybe tier 70 or 75, nowhere near like nowhere near like a T-Bow's Shadow Scythe level. But yeah, like you just mentioned, like just the convenience factor of having a weapon like that, because I don't know, I was thinking about it, I was thinking about some of the combat tasks, the salamanders, using them for some of that. And it's kind of silly that they use that, but maybe it's not, because then you could get people prepped for different things, and I don't know.
No, there definitely is room for that. I think there's always something kind of fun about having some sort of weapon that's just more chill. Like I think a Venator bow is like a good example of like, this weapon's never really amazing at any place, but it's more of like a chill weapon. Like if I want to AFK jellies, like I could just use this weapon that makes it so much less clicking. It's not anything crazy. It's not anything amazing. It's not going to outclass Barrage or something that's specifically meant for massacring stacks of monsters. But yeah, a potential like weapon like that, I think for convenience factor, if it has a high cost associated with it, could be pretty fun. Some people might disagree with that, but I don't know. I think it's appropriate at like kind of like a more mid to high level weapon.
All right.
Not end game though.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, for
but
sure.
I will say for raids 4, we've come out with the range weapon, we've come out with a mega rare melee, and we've come out with a mega rare mage. And I think honestly for raids 4, I think it would be really cool to have a new shield, like have a new like shield that's extremely defensive and acts kind of like an Ellie. Like so it would be like the new best in slot for shield. Like I think that could be a good route to go down, simply to not devalue. I just don't think, because we only have 3 styles. And I
Yeah,
think trying to outclass that with a raids 4 is not going to feel as great. And I think shields, generally speaking, have been just seen as shit because we play offense scape. We play defender scape, which is just every single time you have a one-handed weapon, you always bring your defender.
yeah, absolutely.
And I think having a shield that's truly powerful and truly worth using, especially at raids 4 itself. Like imagine raids 4 is just brutal where you make mistakes and you get fucked up. I mean, you take 80s or 70s to the face. Like if you had a shield that's, you know, negating, at least in certain PVM encounters, 40% of damage or something just ridiculous. We're like, holy shit. Like at least for certain roles, potentially, like, I don't know if raids 4, they're going to try to do that, like go down that route of like, you need like a defender role and a mage role and just all these other kind of roles. So you're there and you need that super tank role and you got to have this dude with this massive shield on. That's just, that just feels almost necessary. I think that would be a really cool route to go down. But then again, I've also heard the argument that coming out with shields and coming out with things that just defeat certain aspects where it's, I don't know, it's tough because shields just inevitably make content easier if you just want to chill out.
Yeah,
But I don't know. I think it's appropriate to have a shield that truly just negates damage very well, and it feels like you could actually replace it with a defender in certain situations.
yeah.
Because we don't have,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, there is really no shield besides an Ellie, which really doesn't feel that great. That really feels good using in a melee setup. Like almost nowhere are you not using a defender. So yeah, my take.
Fantastic. So I think we've dived a little bit. We've kind of put our third eye on. We try to see in the future a little bit here. So let's go back to the past. Take a step back. I wanted to ask you, what are some of your, if not your favorite, old school RuneScape update to date? It can be pretty much anything you can think of. And if you have more than one, fantastic. If you only have one that really stands out to you, fantastic as well.
You said the best?
The best of the best.
Hallowed Sepulchre. And it's not a perfect update by any means, but it's something where the team recognized that there is potential for skilling. There's something that's never been done before, which is coming out with something that is meant to be difficult, not just you're arbitrarily making something difficult like 1.5 tick teaks, where this was never intended in the first place, but it is a very challenging method. But something that its intention is to be very difficult, have a high skill ceiling, and be skilling focused and be very rewarding and feel good doing it. I think they absolutely captured that with Hallowed Sepulchre. And obviously, when you spend 200 plus hours like I have at the place, you start developing little gripes with certain aspects of it. But overall, I mean, it's like one of the best pieces of content they've ever come out with, and it just feels like agility. Like it truly feels like something that
Yeah.
is increasing your own skill in the game and teaching you how to path properly and teaching you to just be more precise with your clicks and be more responsive to certain things. And I don't know, I just think it's wonderful. And it also helps you at PVM, which is actually really just cool that they were able to do that. So
I think
huge
the one
fan.
thing about Sepulcher too is like people, like if you talk to anybody who doesn't like agility in general, they will tell you that they do enjoy Sepulcher a lot of times. And I think the one thing that agility had lacked before Sepulcher, just because you bring it up, is obviously in these videos, if anybody like physically watches them or looks at them, they know I do arty the whole time. And I do arty because for me, it's just such brain dead content that I have no problem like clicking and also focusing on what you are saying and being able to formulate thoughts in response. Whereas I don't think I could do a Sepulcher and also do a podcast at the same time.
Oh yeah, no way. It's yeah. No, I mean, and I when I talk about skilling, and I know I had a little section where I was talking about it, it's not to make all skilling challenging and heavy focus. That's really not my intention when it comes to skilling. I love super brain dead, super chill skilling methods. I love karambwans. Like I think karambwans where you just fill up your little fish barrel and the rest of your inventory at one spot that never moves, and you go and bank it. I think that's such a fantastic gameplay loop. It's like it's nothing broken. You know, you're collecting fish. Um, you do have to move every 4.5 minutes and go to a bank, so it's not like you're just sitting there for 6 hours straight.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about that Duke mining in a sec if you're interested.
Oh,
But
I have no idea what that is. So absolutely.
yeah. Well, I'll just finish by saying like it's skilling can have very brain dead, very chill methods, and I think that's very essential when it comes to skilling. There needs to be options. Some people they see skilling as they want everything to just be as AFK as possible because they want to, work or they want to watch videos on the side. And I think having respectable XP rates for those where it's not just completely game breaking and being able to just skill passively is really essential. And so my idea is not to get rid of that by any means, but to just add more variety and add just more exciting methods alongside these more AFK styles. So the Duke mining is Duke Succulus, which is one of the DT2 bosses, has it's the mushroom, but you also have to mine this little salt stuff, and that you get 5 XP every few ticks, and so you get about 10k mining XP an hour, but your guy never stops mining it, and it's a stackable resource. So you could sit there with, a rock on your keyboard, pressing the space bar, and you can mine for 6 hours straight and get 60k mining XP with one click.
So like you're about to go to bed. Let me set up my Duke miner.
Yeah, and that is a really bad thing for the game. It's really unhealthy, and that needs to be patched or needs to be taken care of because that's just not appropriate. So
I was gonna say I was gonna kind of equate it to the Guardians of the Rift mine, but at least the games start and stop, so you can't do it forever.
Yeah, you can't just sit there for 6 hours and continually. Yeah. So at least I believe so, right? If you started, that's how it works.
Because it'll once the game ends, you have to like that minute and a half cooldown or whatever.
Yeah. So just doing something where, it runs out after 25 minutes or something. Like I wouldn't mind you being able to collect 5k mining XP with one click if you just want to AFK for 25 minutes, like fine. But when you're literally able to, without detection, get 60,000 mining XP every night, or just whenever you just want to log in, put your finger on the space bar and mine 60k, like that is broken. That needs to be addressed. Like that can't be in the game. And even though it's it's not that big of a deal, like, dude, it's botting. It's just another element of botting. And what terrifies me is I think Jagex intentionally put that into the game. I think Jagex understands that there are players that actually low key, like they'll say all day that they don't want botting, they don't want botting in the game and stuff. But when it's Jagex approved botting, they're actually like really for it, and they want to see. Like I think a lot of people, if they randomly came out with a redwood that's just endlessly choppable and you just fucking click it and get, even if it was like half the XP, it was like 30k woodcutting XP an hour, but you can just
Basically, if
endlessly do
blistered
it.
wood logs were stackable.
Exactly. Like people would love it. Like there would be a huge section of the player base that would absolutely love to just sit there for 6 hours straight without having to click and just gather, whatever it would be, even 200k woodcutting XP every 6 hour log. Like that's just broken. Like we can do not incentivize that. Get rid of that shit as quick as possible. It's so stupid adding stuff like that to the game. It's just, this is clearly leading to more people hating skilling because, for example, like what is the point now of mining traditionally when you can just go to sleep and gain 60k mines? Like you might as well never mine if your entire goal is to just get to 99 mining one day. Like get Desert Treasure 2 done and mine this fucking place every night, and you'll get 99 mining alongside any other thing you do during the day. It's like, it's just horrible for the game.
100%. Yeah, there should never be a method where I can click one thing and basically just do nothing. Like, obviously, people talk about another big one. People talk about is like the super AFK nightmare zone, how you don't have to click every 25 minutes. But I digress.
Yeah, I'm against Nightmare Zone stuff. I'm against anything, like I'm against splashing. I've been against splashing for, it's not, it's just like one of those things where it's not even that big of a deal, but it's still just slowly getting that snowball going of, oh, okay, this is acceptable. Why isn't this acceptable? Let's keep adding more just stupid AFK botting shit that's Jagex approved. I hate it.
So, what would you think? Because we talked about, like, you talked about your love for the sepulcher, and we've just talked about a little bit about the distaste for some of these methods. Would you want to see a sepulcher style method for everything alongside a Karambuan fishing, etc. type style? Or do you think each skill has its own niche to fill and there should be something that can fill it that is going to keep you engaged and enjoyable, but also not being, as we talked about, as you mentioned earlier with the gnome cube, with the 3-tick method, with it just being a little bit easier on the wrists.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the ground that we want to stand on in regards to, I guess the actual question is, where are the grounds we stand on in regards to making things more engaging, but also keeping things at a level where people are only going to want to do it for 30 minutes and then go AFK rocktails. I said rocktails. Wolf, anglerfish.
Mm-hmm.
My RS3 came out right there.
Yeah, no, some people kind of meme my takes and they'll just come out with something that's really just not true. Some people are like, oh, Saebae just wants everything to be house sepulcherized. I've mentioned, with running activity, like rune crafting is a running activity. You're running to an altar and just continually doing that. So my suggestion was, with the cosmic underworld that I suggested, it's this idea that there's a main altar. It looks like the cosmic altar where there's 4 pathways leading to it. And instead of just a direct path to the altar, there would be a path has different, obstacles. One of them was like a red light, green light kind of thing where you have like a Duke Succulus eye that opens and you got to stop, you got to stop in your tracks. And then if you don't, you get sent back to the beginning, and then it'll close and you can run, but it'll do like a little fakey where it kind of looks like it's about to close, but it'll open again. And so you have a bunch of players in this hallway that you all see, and we're like, you run, 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 stop, stop. And if anybody continues, then they get sent back. And it'll just be kind of this fun element of, okay, there's a little bit of paying attention to do. You see people get sent back, have a little bit of a laugh, compete with your friends so you can just barely get that extra tile in right before the eye opens. And then there's another path that's like a little bit of a soda seg maze where you just like a little path going, and you just got to follow that and not mess up. And then there was another path that's the floor changes colors, so like this wouldn't be able, not everyone could do this path, but the idea behind the Cosmic Underworld is you can kind of choose your own, in a way, like you could lose ticks to choose your own hallway. So it'd be a slightly more inefficient, but you could continually just do the same one that you enjoy the most. And one of them would be like the floor is flashing between different colors every 2 ticks. So it'd flash red, you got to turn on your prey melee. It would flash green, you got to turn on your prey range, flash blue. And so you're just running across this thing, and just briefly for like 8 seconds or something, and you're just running, and you just got to click these little things. So it's nothing crazy, but you got to pay a little bit of attention. And the last one was just like a phase 4 wardens thing, where the floors kind of glow a little bit of like a dark, and then it electrocutes you. So you just got to pay attention to that. And so it's just like this element of, if you want to be super efficient, it is randomized where you just continually get a new hallway. But that is my idea of like a sepulcher-ish thing for rune crafting. And when it comes to other mini games, I think the only one that could be quote unquote sepulcherized is something like thieving, just simply because it's not a classic gathering skill. It's not a classic buyable. It's one of those ones in between. I think agility and thieving are generally the ones that aren't necessarily classified, and that could also be a sepulcherish. But when it comes to fishing and mining and woodcutting, just keep the rhythm. Like, have a new method that comes out that involves, maybe it doesn't even involve anything where it comes to like gnome cubing or knife logging. Maybe it's simply just keep up the rhythm every 2 ticks. So like imagine there's like a little route, like a big circle route where you're continually going like this little diagonal where you're hitting the rocks, but you got to hit them every 2 ticks. If you lose the rhythm, then you lose some time, but there's nothing involving any gnome cube. So it's extremely easy on the wrist. It would be like P3 wardens where the skulls show up and you just click the skulls every 1 tick, like boom, 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 boom. And you're just in this nice little rhythm, but it's continuous. If you mess up, or maybe there's even falling boulders in the minigame that adds a little bit of risk, that, okay, you kind of got to pay a little bit of attention, but nothing's RNGing you. And it's just getting the rhythm going. And I think that's just the essentials behind it. Don't add mini games where there's absolutely no rhythm to it, but it's like this, in theory, this really cool gameplay loop. Like they probably think things like Volcano and Giant's Foundry are great on paper, but it's just, there's nothing going on. Like, it's just click the new station, click the new station, click the new station. It's like, this
click the water, click the lava, click the new station. Yeah.
It's so boring. It's not fun long term. People like methods like that, and they won't talk shit about it because they're getting great XP, great rewards. But deep down, if there was no real incentive to do this, like, nobody would care about this many. Like, the fundamental gameplay loop of this is absolutely mind-numbing and boring and unfun and just pathetic. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much room for the game to grow, for skilling methods to grow. And I think I want to tap in just for a second on what you said a little earlier about, PVM has gotten so many fantastic things. And we always joke that Jagex loves PVMers but doesn't care about, PKers or whatever it is. But it truly feels that as time has gone on, a lot of people that, like, the people that don't PVM, like your 200 mil all guys, or like your collection loggers like yourself, or like people who don't PVM because it's all they like to do, have kind of fallen towards the wayside a bit. Not saying that like they don't think about it, right? Because there are so many things they release that do, cater to different play styles and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, most recently we've gotten big skilling updates, Guardians of the Rift, and then what else has come out? I'm not going to count Forestry.
We have had Giants Foundry. That was in between.
And Giants Foundry. And then for BKers, they got Bounty Hunter, Wilderness Boss rework, which I guess catered to both PKers and PVMers, because now the PKers can just destroy you with the Void Waker and get all your stuff. But I would like to see a more like, you know, a better balance, I guess, because I feel like sometimes some of the communities just get tossed to the wayside because they're not the vocal majority inside of the polling system. That is just kind of how I feel about the whole like mild lack of attention to certain people. And like I mentioned before, it's hard, and Jagex has a lot of work to do if they want to be able to not just please new players, but also like keep people who have been playing forever around. And a lot of work that goes into game development that I truly don't understand. I'm not going to try and tell them how to make their game, but there are just some aspects I wish they would listen to people on a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we are nearing the 2-hour mark. So this is usually the time I like to ask my final question. But before I like to ask my final question, do you have any questions or anything you wanted to ask me?
Yeah, actually, I'm always curious, talking to other podcasters, what their thoughts are on the podcasting game in general, and things that maybe they've struggled with, or things that they just are excited about when it comes to podcasting. So this is what, episode 25, I believe?
27.
27, okay.
26 is being uploaded right now as we speak.
Okay. So episode 27. So, yeah, how fulfilling has podcasting been for you, and do you, like, what's your plan for it in the future?
So that's a great question. The initial thought of it was, I just want to have content on my channel so that my progress videos get more views. And in a sense, it did exactly that. And then I started talking to more people. I started to, get integrated with a little bit more people in the community and different communities, right? Because like the first few people I had on were pretty much only level 3s. And I even had one guy I asked, he's like, "Oh, don't you only do Ironman?" And I never wanted to limit myself to the people I could talk to, because I felt like that would be eliminating, as I just said in like the whole gameplay thing, you're cutting out a whole piece of the puzzle. So I would say the most fulfilling thing has been to like meet so many people and not just talk to them and then never speak again, but like, now I'll pop into their streams or all that kind of stuff. If I have a question on something, so like I mentioned, I had LOH3 on and they did one of my thumbnails now. So it's like, now I suddenly have so many people in like that I've talked to once, so I feel comfortable reaching out. Whereas, for a lot of these, when I talk to people like Heybox and yourself, I was actually getting nervous because it was like, I want to have a good quality thing. And one other thing as well is, in the beginning I was only using like a gaming headset microphone. And just a few months back, I went and I bought a microphone, and then I realized, my plosives aren't great, so I bought a pop filter. And I went to school for audio engineering, so having good audio was like something that started to get really important to me when I realized I'm going to be talking to somebody for anywhere from an hour to 2.5 hours. And if I'm a listener, I want good audio quality the whole time.
Yeah, it's definitely important. The issue, and I bet you can agree with me on this, is like you don't have a studio to just talk to somebody where everything's set up. So it's heavily dependent on what your guest's mic sounds like for absolute quality. Because if yours sounds flawless and your guest is just on a headset, you're kind of doomed for failure when it comes to that department. So, and I've dealt with that my whole time. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I think if the guest is, I think if it's somebody people want to hear a lot enough, then a lot of people can just get over it. But I think, and that the cool part is like as time has gone on, a lot of headset mics have become better and more bearable.
Mm-hmm.
So like I could have kept using the other one. I think if you listen to, like the first like I think it was like 10 or 12, like it's fine. You can listen to them, but they're not going to sound anywhere near as nice as like now. And even now I'm still thinking about, buying buying an actual interface and like getting like an AT 2040 or a SM7B or something else.
Yep, it's definitely worth the investment. But like I said, it's really going to boil down to what your guest's mic sounds like at
Yes.
the end of the day. I
Another
will say,
Go ahead,
no,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, you first.
I was just going to say your interview style has been really, really great, especially for only having recorded about 27 of these. I felt listened to, and you allowed me to speak, and grateful for that. And thank you for being a wonderful host. I mean, you're killing it with these. So I think in the future, I think you got something special going on here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I know some people don't really care for the interview style, so as time has gone on, I've tried to, give people my point of views, or like I did just now, do you have any questions for me? Because
Hmm.
inevitably there's always been some people like don't really have a lot of experience with talking to somebody who's played level 3 for so long, or maybe somebody's never played Ultimate Iron Man and they have questions about that, or like yourself, the question about podcasting. And I think to expand like slightly more on it just a little bit is with the audio stuff is this has kind of made me want to do more videos than just my progress videos and podcasts. So for anybody who's listened to, I believe it was the Tans Fang cast, or I think I talked about it in another one before too. I do have some plans to do like an OSRS like movie style video. You ever watch like any of those like Minecraft 100 Days or like the Rust movie videos, anything of that nature?
Mm,
So I want to do something like
yeah,
that with like I was gonna be my own series, and then they announced Trailblazer Reloaded, and I was like, well, maybe I can use that as my like test point to see if I can do something with that. And if people like it, if I like making it, then I can expand more on that in the main game itself.
I see. Yeah, I think there's so much potential in the OSR scene to come out with new exciting content that people are excited about. That's something I struggle with in general because it's not like I have this dream to just have a huge YouTube channel of, amazing content. I came into YouTube with a thing in mind, which was I wanted to talk about the game. I just want to
Yeah.
talk. I don't want to have to create any huge production or try to upkeep a certain image. It's just I just want to talk with people about RuneScape, and I want to talk about my own thoughts. And I think getting that niche, whatever it is, and not everyone's like me. Very few people are like me, but just finding something you can really enjoy and see yourself doing long term, I think is just the best route to go down in regards to content creation on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So my final question for you is a little bit more unique compared to other people. Obviously, most people I talk to don't do this like for a living, basically, right?
Yeah.
So for yourself, your answer might be a little bit different. So the usual final question I ask is, um, you know, how do you keep your work life gaming balance in check? And where do you see yourself with the game in, in the future? But I think what the question I would most like to hear you answer is, do you find less enjoyment from playing the game ever since your stream and YouTube kind of got you to a place of, you know, being comfortable with that?
I think I understand for the most part what you're asking. I've definitely been playing a lot less over the past year,
Yep.
and that was a mixture of factors that kind of got me to that place. And One of it was just realizing I'm getting older. I'm 28 now, and realizing I spent a hefty amount of time sitting at my computer, staring at a screen for, just years on end, and spending a significant amount of time and kind of neglecting uh, healthy ways to cope with real life existence. So I think a big reason why I personally got into RuneScape and became extremely addicted to it and just became obsessed with it was, I think, an underlying coping mechanism to just ignore real life. I was struggling with certain things, like, who I was as a person, and that's a continual struggle and just existence of just wondering why you're here.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the way I coped with that, and there's a lot more to that. There's religious upbringing that I had to kind of figure out, where I stood on just spiritual matters, and then as well as like, what do I want to do with my life? What career path do I want to go down? And a lot of that was just extremely stressful for me. And I don't feel like I realized it at the time how stressed out I was just about life. And so RuneScape was the way I coped with it. And so, building um my income now off of the game and realizing, okay, I guess one of the things I saw last year, especially after, diving into diving into psychedelics as well, was I got a very clear picture of like where I was in life. I was like, holy shit, like this is where I am right now. I'm, a year and a half ago, I was not healthy physically. I wasn't doing much with my body. I was just getting into it. Like I would say 2 years ago was like my peak. Just I wasn't in a physically good state. And I realized RuneScape was contributing to that because, it's just like I'd rather play RuneScape than work on my nutrition or work on my physical exercise or just these simple habits that can make me mentally and physically stronger. And I think I saw at a certain point, especially after a certain psychedelic experience, that where do I want to be in my 30s? Like, is this like, would I be okay with being where I am right now at 37 or 38 or 30? Like, at what point do I kind of start taking on my future head on instead of living passively? So that in turn ended up me kind of rethinking certain choices, even as simple as like certain RuneScape grinds. So I'd be like, 200 mil all 2 years ago was not, I mean, it's something I'll never achieve. Like I've accepted that. Like it's just way too many hours. It's just not something I want to do. But there was a time where I was just thinking, if I'm really going to dedicate myself to this game, that's something that I could potentially see myself getting involved with, going for 200 mils. And then I think just realizing how much of a waste that would be um, in the long term, like just going for an extremely long grind that could take, tens of thousands of hours and not really seeing any true benefit of it besides just a little bit of like dopamine and just, I don't know. There was something about the experiences I was having and realizing that my life is finite, that I don't want to spend all day or even half my day or even a third of my day playing this game. So I had to kind of take a step back, reevaluate my hours I was putting in, reevaluate some of my life goals, and understand that I still love the game. I still want the best for it. I still want to play it, but I need to take a healthy look and realize like, okay, what's the real priority in my life? And so that's still something I'm, trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out, especially when it comes to like streaming and YouTube content creation, like, for example, like people really want me to make like a new series or just do something that's more mainstream RuneScape. And I have to figure out in my head, like, just am I willing to spend, 100 hours to make a 10-minute video on something like, is that time input really what I want to be spending my time doing? Is there something else I could be doing that still involves the game, still involves me getting, enjoyment from it, but not feeling like I've just sunk in a ridiculous amount of time into the game that's not giving me as much satisfaction as it used to. And I think, I don't know, it is partly a struggle when it becomes my income to deal with these kind of things, because for so long it never crossed my mind of playing too little. It was always just like, I'm addicted to this game, I just play it all day every day, it's not that big of a deal. But I don't know, I think it's just an ongoing process I'm trying to figure out, like, of where I stand, because when it is my life, like, I really do have an excuse to play
Yeah.
a lot. I actually, I'm one of the few people that have an excuse. Like, if the more I play, probably the more I'll make. But it's just one of those things where, again, like, this is the example of 38. Okay, I'm now 38. Like, am I still playing 8 hours a day RuneScape every day? Like, 48. Am I still playing 8 hours? Like, at some point, this has got to tone back a little bit, and I got to focus on other important things in my life. So overall, still love the game, still play it every day. I don't play it quite as much, not even near as much as I used to, which, kind of changes the way I view the game as well. But yeah, it's one of those things I'm still trying to figure out, the game balance wise and everything. But I feel like right now I'm in that weird position where I'd actually feel more appropriate playing more. I feel like that would be where I'd want to end up being. So, good question.
Awesome. I really like the balance that you're going for, and like the reflection. I had a very similar reflection myself, probably mid 2021, end of 2021 ish. I started dating somebody. I have other things in my life I do, so I can't just, obviously, like you said, you're in a unique position where, if you play more, you could theoretically make more because you could do more content, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think though that's the case, it's so important to have such a good balance and like keep yourself healthy, because you could sit at a computer for 12 hours a day, play the game, make a shit ton of money, but if your body's breaking at 35, was it worth it?
Yeah. It's tough. I mean, even, just to expand on a little bit more, if you don't mind, is
Absolutely.
just being early 20s, and I try not to focus on regrets. I think everything in my life, we're not going to go down the route of if I even believe free will exists, but I will say, the experiences I've experienced, there is somewhat of what I would consider a regret of, like, not having explored or, catered, or not catered, but just like nourished relationships that I had, instead of just kind of letting a lot of friendships fall apart just to sheer neglect of just like, I just not talking, not upkeeping these friendships that I built over years, and just kind of completely deep diving into RuneScape and ignoring friends and ignoring responsibilities and ignoring all this stuff. I feel like just for years I did that, and now when I look at it, I see, wow, like, I really haven't done much outside of the world of RuneScape and content creation in the past 5 years. Like, there's nothing really that besides that, which I am grateful for. Like, I'm grateful for what I've, been able to accomplish for the most part, and I'm grateful for the experiences I've had playing the game, and just, but there is that element of my life that I feel like I miss and I just neglected completely. And so that's something where it's like, I know that's a regret, and I don't want to feel that in another 5 years from now. I don't want to feel like, okay, I lost another kind of 5 years to having had new adventures and new experiences in real life. So it's just one of those things where, you got to kind of figure it out, because there's always time to play RuneScape. There's always a balance you can make, but for me, I had a problem, getting that balance just right for years, and I don't want to continually live with that regret. So
Awesome. I think it's a fantastic answer. And I think, you know, if anyone listening can take something away from that, I would say, find your balance. Don't get to a place, because I think, you're not even close to alone in that scenario. Like, I myself use RuneScape as an escape for so long from so many things. So I think you probably hit very hard home on a lot of people listening, and
one other thing I'll say.
Yeah.
There's a time for everything. So if somebody were to have told me 4 years ago that, their life story of, I used to play RuneScape a lot, now I kind of toned back, like I just wouldn't have given a fuck back then. Like I'm just like, I'm doing my thing, like I'm happy. So this is not to say everyone's like if you're not doing this, you're wasting your life or anything. Truly, everyone's life is completely different. You can find satisfaction in other things. I personally stopped finding as much satisfaction at the time I did. And so not everyone's my age, not everyone's dealt with my experiences, not everyone. So live your life. And if you're feeling like you're not satisfied, then reevaluate like that. But if you're feeling fully satisfied with what you're doing, I mean, your life's yours. I think just the freedom of being able to do whatever the hell you want in the 21st century is just incredible. Like, but you just gotta, why not just, potentially reevaluate if you are feeling, kind of stuck or something. But if you're not, I mean, dude, just enjoy your life. Life should be lived. Life should be enjoyed. So fucking enjoy it the way you're enjoying it.
Awesome. Yeah. And just, enjoy your existence. You only got one of it.
Yeah. That we know of.
That we know of. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you, Mr. Saebae, for joining me today and sitting
My
down
pleasure.
and chatting with me.
Thanks for having me.